Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Training Tuesday. I'm your host, Jacklyn, and let's get started. So, I have about 7 graded stake entries this week, the next week and a half coming up. So, I'm just going to open up all these guys in a new window or a new tab. We've done this on a couple other episodes, and this is my typical approach to managing my graded entries for the week. So what I'll do now is I'll go up to the first horse here. So we have Rectitude. This horse is running in a stake on Saturday in the Champagne Mile. Um, so this horse is already at 100% form. Injury risk is very low. Has not raced yet this year, so I'm guessing I've sat on this horse for a little while. So since March 25th, has had a lot of jogs. It would probably be ideal if I could give this horse a workout before this race, but it is Saturday. We're on Tuesday right now, so it would only be about Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 health and energy regen. So definitely gonna sit on this horse. If I had a little bit of forethought and managed my my nominations a little bit better, I would have given this horse a workout or two last week. Um, and something to keep in mind too is that when you have a horse that's 100% form, you're probably thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to give this horse a workout." But if you have the time to do so, it can be really beneficial to give them a couple of workouts because the first workout will undoubtedly drop their form down quite a bit. The horse would probably go from like 100% down to 80 something, maybe high 90s. Um, and then you give another workout, and that would probably bring the form up pretty close to 100% again. Maybe another jog just to sort of even it off. You might end up down a couple of points, but what you could potentially gain is some good improvement to the invisible stats. So I'm basically taking a bit of a guess that this horse exited his last race in good order and that he just needed some jogs to sort of get things together. So we'll see if he can return to that 130.97 highest race rating that he has. But we'll see what ends up happening on Saturday. I know that races come up pretty tough. Usually is a pretty tough one, so we'll see how it goes. Fibonacci Bloom is next. This horse I think is on the alsos. Yeah, so this horse is on the also eligibles for Saturday. If you're sitting on the alsos, I know it can be a really tricky thing. What do I do? Do I wait it out? Um, do I just jump off and go for something else? I think a lot has to do with whatever your other plans are for the horse. So let's say this, for example, is a Triple Crown or a Turf Triple Tiara prep race, which means it's a race that's a similar distance to the actual Triple Tiara series. Um, if I really wanted to, I could scratch this horse, get her a race this week, and that could potentially be better off for her to potentially qualify for the Turf Oaks. Or I can wait it out and just see what ends up happening. So what I typically do is I will wait it out on the alsos list. I usually, if I've nominated, it's because I want to run in that stake. So um, what I'll do is I'll just sit and wait. The official race gets created on Friday, so it's always a day before. So Friday morning, the official race will be created for this. She will undoubtedly be at 2020 on that day. At least should be anyways. I think I'm just going to give her a jog right now. So if by Friday morning she doesn't pull into the field, then I can enter her in a race on Sunday, which puts her at the same cadence as if she would have run in this race on Saturday. So really not really missing anything there. So that's sort of my take on approaching these horses. Um, because a lot can happen, and a lot of horses do end up scratching. We've seen a lot of horses pulling in off the alsos list over the last season or two. So, a lot of stables are doing that. Anything can happen. A horse could be set up poorly for the race. Who knows? So I'm going to take a chance, anyways. I do have this horse pending race entry, and as I say that, I notice this. So I will also often do this, especially if they're pretty low on the um, alsos list. If they're low on the nomination list, because in the event that I end up getting kicked out, I'd rather at least have my horse engaged in a race and then I don't have to worry about training again because I felt comfortable to race off of that. So I always know that I will double check my entries, my graded stake entries, usually on the Monday. I've been a bit busy this week, so today I'm checking them for the first time. So anyways, I'll just scratch this horse and from the allowance race on Thursday. If I really wanted to, I could just skip the graded stake, go for this allowance, but I'm just going to scratch. Um, this is a normal error, by the way. I need to fix something within here. But know that if you do receive this, it means your horse has actually been scratched properly. We can even reload the page here. I'll do a quick reload so we can see that the horse has been removed. So now I'm going to just scroll down, take a look at this horse. So last raced pretty abysmally actually on the last start of the end of the season. Has had one jog since then. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this horse another jog. Not the best prep for the stake race. Probably not really good graded stake material with a 123 higher high race rating, but we'll see what happens if she draws in and give her that chance to shine. On Trend is next, and this is an older mare that I have gunning for the Winners Justify Mile, and she is looking horrendously with her form. I think she got injured. Yeah, she got injured in her last race. This was not a very good management on my part when it comes to nominating this horse because I really don't feel confident that 1 week away I'm going to have this horse in good shape. So I'm actually going to um, open up this race, find my entry down here. Let me double check. So what I'm doing right now is I'm double checking to see if there's other entries because if there are no also eligibles, then my horse would get a suspension. So I'd rather take a chance and run her at that point. But there's 3 horses on the alsos. I'd rather give them a chance at running in this race because my horse is just not going to be in good shape for this one. So we're going to scratch. And that's that. So next up we have Royal Saffron. Royal Saffron is just shy of 1 million lifetime earnings and is in the Hershey Kiss Classic. Now, I'm starting to get a little bit more confident running 7-year-olds in these races. Some part of me feels a little bit guilty when I run them 7-year-old in these races because they have the advantage of the 6-year-old season to collect those earnings, which is undoubtedly easier for them than the 4 and 5-year-old category. So it can sometimes be a little tricky to get those 6-year-olds in these early races unless I have a really kick-ass Wednesday 5-year-old career. So 96 form, IR is looking pretty good. Last race in March, has trained since with a number of workouts and jogs. So I'm going to sit on this horse. I don't think 4 points of form is really going to make or break anything with this horse. So we're just going to sit, let this horse go to that race on Sunday and see how he does. Next up, we have Prefix, Fix, whatever you want to call that. Sitting on the altos for the Russian Roulette stake. She's a 6-year-old mare who's had a pretty good start to the season already. She last raced on the 3rd and has had a jog since then. I could potentially give her another jog. I think I might take a chance. I'm going to roll the dice. She's on the altos. We'll see what ends up happening. She might draw in, she might not. And her form did not change, so that was an experience. All right, well, that is what it is. You roll the dice sometimes, and that's what we did. I'm going to just go and delete this because we scratched our horse from that race, so I don't like having notifications, so away it goes. Stark Paradox. So this horse is in the Nikita GI Marathon. Has a pretty good post. She had a nice 5-year-old campaign, but has so far not done very well as a 6-year-old. Form is at 87%, so we are going to need to train. I think I already have. She took a nosedive after that last race with her form. So we'll give her a good breeze. Definitely needs it. See where she ends up. 98, perfect. So I'm hoping that she will run a little bit better than her first race this year because that race was not like her at all. And that was her first off the board finish in her career, actually. So we'll see how she does. She has finished 3rd in a graded stake before. So we will see how this goes on Wednesday. And she has plenty of time to recover now, so I'm just going to sit on her and not do anything else until she races. Elusive Dancer, and here's another one that took a bit of a nosedive after her last race. Now, this one's Wednesday. I also think I mentioned a horse earlier who I thought was running on a Wednesday but wasn't. There was no way that On Trend was going to get ready for that race on the weekend. So, anyways, glad I scratched that one. So this one has a week, potentially. Last race on the 8th. She did win, but she had a lot of jogs going into that, so that's why she bounced a bit after that one. I am very likely going to have to scratch this horse from the graded stake. I don't think I'm going to get her ready in time. I'm going to try giving a handily workout here and see where she ends up. So, not great. So let me think again for a second here. So we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, health and energy regen. So that's 7 regens. which would get us to 1919 if I didn't train her again. I'm going to need to train her twice because she's going to need a handily workout to get that form up, and I'm going to have to give her a jog first to get that IR down, which might not actually get below 80. And then she's going to end up having really high IR anyways. So I think that settles it. I think I'm just going to scratch this horse. I can't get her ready in time for this race. So do a quick check. There's a couple of alsos in here, so I'm definitely going to scratch, give someone else an opportunity to run in this race. And there we have it. Those horses are taken care of. I'm going to go delete this notification quickly. Gone. And now we can resume our regular programming. So I'm going to go into the training center. Now I know yesterday I actually trained a bunch of 2-year-olds, so I'm not sure how many are going to be available here today. We'll take a look. I know I have a boatload of them, so all right. So we have a few jogs here because it's high IR. This is their first jog that they're having in their careers, so I have to update to average, which is just my typical preference. I'm just used to using it. There's really no rhyme or reason behind it. You might notice that I have a bunch of these guys are sitting at 4 furlongs handily with the gate. So if you've tuned into a previous episode, you already know, but typically my approach with 2-year-olds is they'll get a 2 furlong handily, a 3 furlong handily, then a 4 furlong handily from the gates. And after that, I will then switch down to just handilies until I start to see some ratings that I'm happy racing off of. In about the end of the week, if I don't start to see ratings that really intrigue me, I might start digging into them and see if I have the opportunity to geld them and potentially also give Regumate as well. So I'm just going to switch all these guys up to handily. If I see any 3 furlongs, I can switch those out as well. And everyone else who has IIR will go to a jog. And I have less than 20 today, so I did train most of them yesterday. All right, so we'll train these horses. I do apologize if I get a little nasally or sniffly. I see my allergies are going crazy today. All right, so jog, jog, jog. Some ratings that are a little bit at this point, but you know, I've had some really good horses come from meager beginnings, so I give everybody a good chance if I can. Nothing really standing out. Pretty average horses in here so far. So that's that. So those guys are all trained, all ages, and away we go. So I'm just gonna switch this one up to a breeze. Jog is good. Handily for under 80. Jog. Breathing. Breathing. Handily. So I've seen some questions about, wondering when to use breathing versus handily. So I've mentioned this in a few other episodes as well. My typical approach is if they're below 80% form, then they get a handily workout. The only exception to below 70 and not getting a handily workout is if their IR is at 80% or higher. Because if you give any kind of workout, actually, breathing or handily, to a horse who has 80% or higher IR, you will have a bad session. So do not do that. Highly recommend not doing that. But the key with this is that it's all for the older horses that who have already sort of hit their peak, I guess you could say. They've earned their high 120s or their 130s ratings. So I'm not really concerned about trying to build up their stats. Now the 2-year-olds, is really important to build up their stats, their invisible stats, their speed, their stamina, things like that. And I think I mentioned this as well in the last couple of episodes. So handily workouts give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to helping out their invisible stats. Like they're really, you think about yourself if you were to go train to run. If you were just doing slow, easy runs, you're gonna build up some fitness and whatnot. And it's just gonna happen at a bit of a slower rate than maybe if you were to train really, really hard. Of course, the other side of that is that if you train really, really hard, it is gonna have a higher impact on your injury risk. And, you know, you can also overdo it really easily. So sometimes, if you've ever gone and worked out and then all of a sudden the next day you were just done, you had no energy left. That's sort of like going over the top with your form, and your form dive bombs a little bit. You're not on top of your game. You need a little bit of time to recover. So those are just some things to keep in mind. But my typical rule of thumb, if they're a decent older horse that doesn't need that extra oomph of training, then they get a breezing workout. If they're 80% or below, they'll get a handily workout. And if it's a 2-year-old, they get handily until I'm ready to start getting them into a race when I need to focus more on having their form corrected. And by correcting their form, what I mean is treating them sort of like an older horse, where if they're 80% or above, then they get a breezing. If they're 80% or if they're below 80%, then they get handily. So hopefully that wasn't more confusing than what things already were and sheds a little bit of light. So that's about it for my horses today. I have pretty light training today. Give these guys a good go. So now we'll enter. So we have fast, good, and slow for this horse. So let's see, we have good coming up. Perfect. I'm going to also show a couple of tricks with race entry preferences as well in a second, which I think can be really handy for 2-year-old races, but also for older horses when you're trying to find the right race for them. But I'm going to enter these ones first, and then we'll go into that. So fast, muddy, good. Don't want to touch my taskbar. Fast, muddy, good. Muddy, done. Not ready to run off 88%, 99% form ready, firm, good, soft. Yeah, good. Go with that. Perfectly swift, muddy, good, sloppy. I'm gonna find something out a little bit just because of the IR. Give his horse a good week to drop that down. So IR drops by 1% per day. So if I enter out a week, it'll be about a 7-point drop in IR, which will be a little bit more comfortable to race off of. Good, heavy, soft. We have soft coming up there. Fast, good, muddy. This muddy on Saturday. I think that was Saturday. Everything blends together. It's been a long day. Fast, good, muddy. This one we're going to go out a bit too. Go for this good one on Tuesday. I don't like this. I'm going to give this horse another jog and race off of that. This horse is slow, fast, good. We'll go with the fast race that's coming up. And this horse is not ready. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Zardoz here and show you something called the race entry preferences. So if you're not familiar with this, it's over here in the right-hand side, right next to enter a race. These are global for your whole stable. They're not specific to a horse, although I would love to actually introduce a feature that makes it specific to a horse if you wanted it to be. Because sometimes you have that one horse that, is a little bit tough to find races for because of their conditions or their distance preference or whatever the case might be. Or maybe they're getting old and need to run in an easier race or things along those lines. So for now, though, this is all just stable based. So I like to race solely in Canada, so I only show Canadian races. If you are open to racing elsewhere, if you are premium, this is not available for basics. Basics can only enter their own conference. You can check different conferences. And one of the key things with 2-year-olds when you're entering them in races is to check this box to show all 2-year-old races. So what'll happen when you go to the enter a race thing and the available race list comes up is, and you'll probably notice more with your older horses, is that it'll show you about a 3-level range. So typically it'll identify what level your horse is at, and then it'll show you races that are a level above and a level below. So you have that range to choose from. Obviously, if they're allowance, it'll only show you optional 100 races, allowance, and listed stake, just because allowance and listed stake are the same, and there's nothing higher than that that's available. So when you're entering 2-year-olds, the game actually works off of the same sort of algorithm for the older horses. So 2-year-olds tend to be able to run an allowance races a lot earlier than an allowance, like an older allowance horse. Sorry, I don't know why I'm struggling to get these words out right now. So basically, like what will win at allowance is a lot lower than what would win at allowance for an older horse. So with that, it's often possible for you to go enter your horses, your 2-year-olds. If you don't have this checked, it'll only show you, let's say, optional 60 races, 80 and 50. So then you don't know, then you can't enter the allowance races that you might want to. So if you want to enter allowance races, uncheck this or check this box. It'll show you all of the levels, and then you can choose from all of them to enter your horses. I highly recommend not pigeonholing yourself into what the game might tell you your horse is level checked to, try to go by their ratings and give them a chance. You might be able to see that they could perform better at a higher level early on. And then as everybody starts to mature, the competition gets a little bit stronger, then you might notice that your horse fits a little bit better with what they might train or consult level check to. Hopefully that also wasn't as confusing. I feel like I'm saying a lot of words that might be adding to some confusion here. You can also do this with 3-year-old and up horses. So if you do have, let's say, a horse who's level checking to 100, optional 100, you're only going to see 80, 100, and allowance races. But let's say you want to drop this horse down to 60,000, for example. You can do that just by checking this box. It'll show you all of the levels, and then you can choose what level you want to race at. There's also an option here to show only matching surface type. This will only match your horse's excellent condition. I don't recommend this because you can easily race off of your horse's top surface choice. It's really like an added bonus that you may or may not get, and it just sort of increases at a different scale for each level. So, you don't feel like you have to race at excellent. And I know I tend to prefer excellent, muddy, good, excellent, muddy, good. I'm just looking at this horse right now. Excellent, great, and good. Those would be my first choices if there's something available, but if there isn't, I'm not going to say no to a fair or a poor track either. All right, enough tangents there. There's another one in here, and that's display distances. So this is by default set to prefer within preference range only. So if your horse prefers, like this horse, 1.125 to 1.375 races, it will only show races that have that distance, that are within that range. But what you can do is you can actually go to plus or minus 1/16 of a mile, or an eighth, or 3/16, whatever you're comfortable with racing outside of your distance range. So you can actually find some more races. This is handy for horses who teeter on the edge between two different distance categories. This might be seen in cases where you're around like the 1 mile and 9/16, and I think it's a math right now is very hard. It's just I can't think of what it is. But anyways, if you're like starting at 1 mile and 9/16 and up, you can actually fall in between the two categories of races that get generated, and you might end up not having races for a couple of days just because of roll of the dice. It happens. It's unfortunate, especially also if you have, let's say, a long distance specialist who's like really close to 2 miles, or a sprinting specialist who's really close to 5 furlongs. There might be a time where the races that are generated are a 16th of a mile outside of your zone. So you can come in here and you can actually change this, and it'll show you the races. I'm going to show you what this looks like. Just to give some context to this as well. So what I'll do is I will let this page load and click enter a race. So now we can see there's this minus 1/16. So this is 1/16 out of my horse's preference range. The other general rule of thumb to just keep in mind, yes, you can race your horse outside of your distance range. Just keep in mind that each 16th is about the equivalent to 1 point in rating drop. So if your horse potentially is going to run a race that would earn a 125 rating and you were a 16th of a mile out, it would drop to 124. So if you were an eighth of a mile out, it would drop 2 points, 3/16 out, 3 points, and so on and so forth. So that's a typical rule of thumb to go by for that. But it can give you some additional options. And if your horse is winning very easily, then extending out distance is probably not that big of a deal. It also happens a lot with graded stake races. And there's actually another preference that's available within graded stake races that I'll show you. And we've seen a lot of horses who have run really, really well in graded stakes. We've seen horses win graded stake races outside of their distance. One that's coming to mind right now is, oh my goodness, I just had the horse's name in my head. It was one of King B's horses who almost won the Triple Crown series, but won the Paramount Stakes off of distance preference. I think there's a couple of folks who have also won graded stakes out of preference. So, there's definitely a case to be made. Horses can handle it. It's not the end of the world, and it can be fun to experiment with too. So one of the other things I'm just going to show you quickly, I know we're quite late into this session. It's a pretty long one, so thanks for hanging on. There's also nomination preferences available on the graded stake races, and this will also help you hide or show horses who are within or outside of the distance range. So by default for myself, I like to hide the female horses on open races because I personally don't find that my female horses run well against the boys. Unless they had the X factor, then I might give them a shot, but mine don't. Um, and I also hide horses at a distance range just to simplify my nomination list so that I don't have to do math and figure out who's how many furlongs out. Um, and just it just keeps things simple for my brain when it comes to nominating. But you can actually uncheck this, and then it will show you all of the horses um, who qualify based on their preferred distance range, um, but who so there's a set distance range that horses have to be a part of for this race. Um, but they might not necessarily like the actual distance of this race. So yeah, so here's the preferred distance range. So 1.7 miles to 2 miles. So a horse whose distance range ends at 1.78 would actually still show up as eligible if this was unchecked. Even though the horse doesn't actually like 2 miles, they're still eligible because they have a preferred distance range that falls into that category. So this just hides those horses so that it's only the horses that specifically like that distance. And that's just my way of going with that. So that's about it for today. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this helpful. I hope I didn't confuse anything some more. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help whenever I can. So thank you very much for tuning in and best of luck in the races.